Lights, camera, action.
People need to invest in new perspectives and new ideas to ensure that the reality of our community and what's on our streets is reflected on our screens. My dream is for disability to become the norm on screen. My dream is for people to feel the absence of disability. If it isn't, we're not there yet. I think we feel that with other underrepresented or minority groups. I think we're definitely feeling that. I want to feel that for disability as well. Look at me go. I'm so proud that I'm disabled. I'm a part of this amazing community. Love it, living for it. But some days, when you're tired and when you're in pain, as an actor, having disability can make it harder.
Quiet on set.
Hello everybody, my name is Bridie McKim. I am an actor and an advocate with disability.
Very good actor, I must say. I'm going to have to get some tips off you at the end of this.
I mean, Dylan is making the transition into acting.
Oh, we'll talk about that a bit later on.
I'm sure Dylan actually does want to talk about his big role.
Even in the realm of Bridie.
You don't touch the sides.
Bridie, have you got a disability?
I do.
Yeah, what is your disability and can you explain it for everyone?
Absolutely. So I've got cerebral palsy, spastic diplegia. So that means that the muscles in my legs are quite tight. So for me, I walk with a bit of a limp. I personally like to call it a swagger, but it is a limp. And it means that because my muscles are so tight, I get really fatigued quite easily and my balance is affected. So whenever I'm on a raised platform or if I'm walking upstairs, I always need to be able to hold on to something to balance.
The reason I don't really care, and I'll ask people about the disability, but the reason I wanted to then is, do you like the name spastic diplegia?
I mean, it's an interesting one because spastic is historically a derogatory term, but for me that is the medical diagnosis. So I'm more than happy to use it because the spectrum of CP and, disability in general, as we know, is so broad. So if it allows people to pinpoint it a bit more, I'm more than happy to use it and almost reclaim it in that regard.
Reclaim it, I like it.
That's who I am.
Yeah, no,
I'm
I love
spastic.
It. Yeah, I like that.
So, Bridie, you are one of three. Well, actually, you might actually have any other brothers and sisters, but you're a triplet.
Yes.
Are you the only person born with disability?
Yeah, I'm the only person out of my siblings, so us triplets, the three of us. And then I have a little brother, an 8-year gap, because mum and dad were nervous to go again, of course. Could you imagine another set of triplets? But I am the only one out of all my siblings to have disability.
So, Bridie, quite a complex story then. And I don't want to generalize CP, but my experience of learning through this podcast is it's usually a lack of oxygen to the brain around birth. Is that how you acquired your disability?
Yeah, we were born 10 weeks premature, so we were 30-weeker babies. And so, as you can imagine, it was quite an intense birth. And, they did all the scans on us and nothing really came back as being an issue. And eventually they did I believe it was an MRI. That's on your brain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yeah. And there was a slight bleed in my brain. And at first doctors were like, yeah, nah, she'll be right. That's nothing. A lot of preemie babies have that. But it wasn't until we started getting a bit bigger and all three of us started to go through certain milestones that my parents really noticed that I was falling behind on some of those milestones. So sitting up and crawling, I would always sit quite hunched over and I would only crawl, kind of do commando crawl so I didn't have to use my legs. And then it's a classic story. My mum took me and my parents took me to so many doctors and specialists and they couldn't really figure out what it was because my disability is quite mild in the spectrum of CP. But eventually my pediatric physio, Melissa, apparently she knew the second we came in that I have CP and we went from there.
Now, a lot of people in general, but with disability, compare themselves to their siblings. You have literally two people with the same exact genetics to compare yourself to. How did you go with that? Did you feel any shame in the fact that you had a disability or jealousy to your able-bodied triplet siblings, or were you okay growing up?
Not really, because we were always treated the exact same, which was really lovely. And I guess the privilege of being a triplet as a disabled kid, you've always got a support crew. So my mum and dad would always tell stories. If we would go to a random park or wherever as kids, Jack and Lauren, my brother and sister, would run off and, be really quick, but always eventually circle back to me and check in or help me access certain things that I wouldn't necessarily be able to access on my own. So I think we were always really good team players, and that was really great. The only time I ever really got jealous was because my whole family are really sporty. They're all sporty, and my brother and sister would always win age champions. And they would always get the medal, and they would always, clap, yes, excellent. And, as a kid, of course you get jealous. I want a trophy too.
You as a disabled person gets the good try medal for having a crack, which is what I used to get. The good try
ribbons.
The last place, but the good effort ribbon.
Yeah, I got that. The Lionheart Award.
There you go. Something lame like that. I love that. Yeah.
Bridie McKim, classic. Here she comes.
Lionheart. That's so funny. The Lionheart. That sucks. I love it. Oh.
Well, I mean, obviously you would have had conversations with your parents. And I think, cerebral palsy for a first-time parent can go undiagnosed for a lot longer, because when you talk about, this classic developmental markers, which we have poo-pooed a little bit in this podcast before, but obviously there are some that are key in sort of identifying behaviours. When you've got your brother and sister, crawling and starting to do some more independent work and you can't do it, it would really kind of become a little bit more apparent and earlier maybe than other cases. Have you had a conversation about your parents about how they went, when faced with the idea of becoming a parent to a child with disability?
Absolutely. I think, again, the privilege of being a part of being a triplet, those milestones were so much more obvious, and the fact that I was falling a little bit behind. So if I wasn't a triplet, they probably wouldn't have picked it up for a long time. So that was kind of a benefit to it. But as we know, it's always a spectrum, and kids catch up eventually in their own ways. But I think for my parents, I think any parent just wants the best for their kids. And I think, you don't want your child to have to struggle more than other children. I think that's any parent's biggest fear. But I guess my parents from a very early age just instilled in me, you just do your best and you just do the best you can and we'll make it work.
Were you always chilling like this, or did you go through a phase where you kind of struggled about the fact that you had a disability?
I guess, Dylan, I guess you might experience this too, but some days are easier than others. Some days I'm like, look at me go. I'm so proud that I'm disabled. I'm a part of this amazing community. Love it. Living for it. But some days, when you're tired and when you're in pain, and I think, even in my line of work, in my career as an actor, having disability can make it harder. But then again, being an actor is hard for anyone.
Yeah, but that added hindrance and lack of opportunity sometimes because you, even though I can see you have a disability, for the person on the street, you potentially it's quite invisible as well. You know what I mean? And
we're just thinking, look at this woman. She's got some swag.
Yeah, look at this swaggy walk. She's into herself. I love it.
Her hair's flicking around. Look at her go.
But, you get that burnout sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, to be honest, Dil, when I felt it the most was becoming an adult. Because I think as a kid, you've got the structure of school, you've got so many amazing pediatric specialists around to support you and give you more information and more support. But then once you're 18, you're out in the world, you're trying to follow your career, and then all those supports kind of transition. That's when you can start to feel a little bit isolated, I guess. That's the thing that I think is the hardest, the isolation, because I'm surrounded by so many incredible disabled people within the screen and theatre industry, but also working as an advocate and working as well for Get Skilled Access. There's so many incredible people with disability, but I don't really know anybody who has my specific disability and my specific access needs or experience. And even though a lot of things translate, it can get really frustrating because I wish I could sit down with one person and be like, hey, have you experienced this? Yeah, I have. Oh, that sucks. What do you do to get through it? I can do that with some people and kind of bridge the gaps with other people with disability in that regard, but not necessarily with all the nuanced things that comes with having spastic diplegia.
We have quickly spoke about, you are an actor, and you have done, some pretty incredible work. Here's just a couple of things, and I know I'm leading Dylan into a question here, but The Heights on ABC, for one, I would like to get back to after I know what the next conversation is going to be, about the accessibility on set, which I know is quite accommodating. Christmas Ransom, which was working with Stan, and Bump.
Oh, I've heard of Bump. It's a great show.
Have you done?
I heard of that show, actually. Season 4 coming out soon.
Yeah, rings a bell.
Star some new actors who we'll get into later. But
let's talk about your experience first, and then I'm sure Dylan has a lot of questions.
Can I ask, though, why acting? Like, was it because you were good at it, you fell into it, or did you have that underlying burning desire like I do to kind of change the industry and get greater representation?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. This might be a bit of a tangent, but
hey, that's what we're here for. You got the microphone?
Come on the journey with me. Here we go. Let's lock arms.
The podcast is titled Bridie McKim, which is you. So go for it.
Do what you want.
A soliloquy. You're welcome. Being in a really sporty family, we do classic like Saturday morning rugby, Saturday morning netball, and I played netball from the ages of like 8 to 12. And I hated it because I could never catch the ball. I could never keep up. No one would ever throw me the ball, of course, because I couldn't catch the ball. Mm-hmm. But I just did it, to be with my sister, to fit in, because that's what everyone else did. So that's what I wanted to do too. But I stressed about it all week, and then I would do it. But then on the way home, Mum would always get a movie from Video Easy and a hot chook and some fresh bread. And we would sit down and have sandwiches.
Oh, Lord. Chuck some Kraft single cheese on that bad boy.
Oh, yeah,
maybe a little Kewpie mayonnaise. I'm done.
Whole other level. And if we were feeling bougie, there'd be some coleslaw.
Get out of here. I know that one. The coleslaw.
Yeah.
Delish.
It's just food for the soul.
I'll just let you know, tangents are welcome here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still with me?
I'm with
Excellent. And we would just always watch movies on that Saturday arvo, and that would be my favorite time of the week. And it would bring me so much joy. And I guess, like we were talking before, that feeling of isolation, you never really feel isolated when you're watching a movie. There's always someone you can identify with or someone you can really root for and all that good stuff. So I always thought if I could be a part of giving that feeling to someone else, man, that would be an amazing life. So I never really told anyone that I wanted to do it until I kind of got into drama at high school. And then eventually, like, teachers and my peers started telling me that I was good at it. And I was like, wow, wait, no one's really ever told me I'm good at something before. I'm going to take this and run with it. And I got into the youth ensemble at Queensland Theatre in Bris Vegas, where I grew up. And when I was 18, I auditioned for drama schools and I got into NIDA.
What's NIDA for the people playing at home?
So NIDA is the National Institute of Dramatic Art.
Can you reel off
one of the drama schools.
Some of the ex-NIDA participants for me?
Kate Blanchett,
I've heard of her.
Hugo Weaving.
I've heard of him.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah, he's not bad.
Bridie
McKim.
But it's for people who don't know, it's the bee's knees. It's the best one. So,
we also had a guest. Was it Tim McCallum?
I'm not sure.
Went diving in Perth, broke his neck.
So how was that is that when you realised that you could properly do this? Because getting into NIDA is no easy feat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I did my first ever short film just before then, and I got the film because they were looking for a teenager with CP, and I was like, hello, and I can also act, here we are. And the writer-director of that was an actor who is deaf and a filmmaker who is deaf, Sophia Golan, and she went through NIDA back when she was at a similar age, and because I loved doing that film so much, and I, of course, wanted to pursue it more, I said to her, how do I keep doing this? I have disability. I don't really have anyone to look up to in terms of how to mold my career. What should I do? And she said, like, you're a woman and you have disability. It will be hard for people to take you seriously. She's pretty blunt about it. So you've got to get your foot in the door. You should go to drama school, prove that you can act, prove that you can work, and go from there. So that's what I did.
It's pretty hard work. How'd you go with the load? And I know this is for a lot of young people with disabilities studying and working. You know, your disability might prevent you from doing stuff, or as you said, you know, sometimes you do wake up a bit with more pain or illness or tiredness or whatever because of our day-to-day tasks are sometimes a bit harder.
And taking longer of your day to get ready, yeah.
Were they accommodating with that kind of stuff? Or because you're one of the first of your kind to go through that system, will you just head down and just suck it up and try to get through it?
Yeah, I was very much head down, bum up, do the work. And it was difficult because I was 18. I'd just moved to a whole new city. I didn't really have the know-how or the vocab to request access requirements. I didn't even know to call them access requirements.
Or the confidence too. You just want to fit in again. And like actually going, oh, you know what? I can still do it as good as Sandra or Peter who aren't disabled, but I need this. But I didn't do it at uni. I could have got away. I just sucked it up. And like I go to class and be up 8 stairs and I'd be like, oh, by the way, I'm in this class. Like as if I should have just bloody got on the front foot, but I felt like a pain in the ass, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing you really internalize. You don't want to be the pain in the ass. And because I went there to prove that I could work in the industry and prove that I wouldn't be a quote unquote burden on the industry. I felt like if I was too quote unquote annoying, or if I asked for too much, they would be like, oh, well, you're too difficult. You're a diva. You'll probably never work in the biz. So I really internalized the medical model of disability growing up. And I thought if I could work hard enough and make myself strong enough, I wouldn't have to request as many adjustments, which is so silly.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the work that you then got into after, graduating from NIDA, having the resume within acting. You then took on some the Heights for the ABC. I know that they were, well, I don't know. Sorry, I've read that you somewhere that you said that the accessibility of the set was quite good. Was that because you did gain that confidence in asking for some assistance with what you needed?
I think the reason why that job was so accessible is because they asked me what I needed. And I don't think I'd had that experience before. They were pretty much like, hey, what do you need to do your best work? And I was able to tell them. And it actually took me a while to figure out what I needed because I'd never really been able to have that conversation before. But that was such an inclusive experience. And I knew I did my best work on that job because I wasn't in pain. I wasn't knackered. I wasn't like haggard in my close-up, looking like dead behind the eyes because I was trying to battle my way through. So it was good for production and it was good for me to have my access needs met.
What do you think about I'd like to say, hopeful changing of the guard a bit where representation is getting a bit better? For example, I saw Barbie on the weekend. It was good, not great. I thought, did you like Barbie? Have you seen Barbie?
I've not seen it.
But they had people with disability in there, not in the main role speaking, but there was a woman who I think she's a wheelchair dancer, and she was in there, and I was like, shit, good start. How is it progressing? Is it obviously it's getting a little bit better, but there are still many barriers? What's your diagnosis on the industry?
Yeah, I reckon it's definitely getting better, Dill, and I think I'm really grateful for that, and I acknowledge that. I wouldn't have a career if it was 10 years ago. I probably would never have gotten my foot in the door, and that's the reality. But like you said, it would be great if we had more demand for not only a person with disabilities there, like rolling across, and because that was the Barbie movie, it was great representation that a wheelchair user was there, but we didn't really see her face, we didn't know her name, we didn't see her speak
talk. She didn't communicate.
She didn't really have a character. And I think especially in the screen biz, like as we know, diversity is key now, and productions are really investing in diversity and making sure that they're both cast and crew are as diverse as possible. But the reality is sometimes, on the list of diversity, disability can sometimes fall off the list.
Yeah, it's the one they're scared of because it might require a few more conversations and things like that. I think it's a start having the representation, but they would never be thinking about writing main parts where the character is disabled and being brave enough to potentially not even talking about the disability, and them just being there. It is starting. I think we need more writing to be inclusive of the characters and their disability. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Writing good characters with disability is fundamental, and also characters where their arc isn't about their disability.
Yeah.
My disability is a really important part of me. It influences a lot of parts of my life, but it isn't the defining thing about who I am in my story, in my personhood. But then again, on the flip side of that, it would be great, even for casting, even if there were roles that say Sally's an accountant and she's having an affair or whatever the story is. Why can't Sally be disabled? And why does it have to be explicitly characters are written with disability and therefore have actors with disability play them? Why can't we? Because I'm pretty lucky I've played characters that aren't necessarily disabled, but because I've played them, for me, they're disabled, but they aren't written as such. I would love to see more of that because for me, that's true inclusion embedded within our industry. And as well as that, ensuring that our cast, not only our cast, but also our crews behind the camera, ensuring that people with disability have roles in that sphere as well.
I was in America recently doing some meetings because I'm trying to do a bit of acting, and one of the Americans over there, a lovely person, was like, what kind of roles could a person in a wheelchair play? Or what character arcs? And I said, they could be a murderer, they could have an affair, they could go to jail for tax fraud. And they were just like, it was like their faces fell off. They were expecting me to say something else, like, I don't know, a Paralympic athlete. I was like, just like anything. And they were like, oh, yeah, actually, that's a good point. But they had never thought about it like that. And I think we recently filmed a bunch of new TV commercials for our foundation, and we're using big brands, and they had to cast people with disability. We went to mainstream casting agents, and they said, not going to be able to find talent. They don't exist. That is the biggest barrier. Like, there is the definition of a door closed, not because of us, people with disability, because casting, these casting agents of course we exist, but they just don't, it's not on their radar, and it's not their fault. I suppose it is their fault, but I also, I'm a positive guy. It's just, they just don't think it exists, so it's about education as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Like sometimes people's ignorance is not their fault, but we need to have these conversations. Yeah. So they're no longer ignorant, so the baton can be passed on to them. And I think people assume that the biggest barriers are like costs of adjustments, which then again, adjustments aren't that expensive at all in the whole scheme of a budget. And also people assume that like the infrastructure isn't built for people with disability. And both of those things can be true, but actually the biggest barrier is people's attitudes and assumptions. And like that sucks because like that's massive, but also that's kind of good because we can easily change people's assumptions and negative attitudes when it comes to disability. That doesn't really cost a lot of money. That doesn't really come out of people's budgets. It just means that people need to invest in like new perspectives and new ideas to ensure that, the reality of our community and what's on our streets is reflected on our screens.
Speaking of which, you even said pass the baton. You have been on the show Bump, and Dylan was just announced to be on season 4 of the TV show. Can we talk about your role, Dylan? Can you give him some advice for being on that set in particular and what you experienced?
I've been watching Bump just to catch up, because it's a great show, first and foremost. There's 3 seasons on Stan, Australia. Check it out. Or wherever you find your good shows. I was watching Bump. I was like, bang. Episode 2, there's Bridie throwing spaghetti on someone. What was the experience like on that show and other shows around Australia and the ones that you've acted in?
Bump was a really great experience because, again, they were like, hey, you good? Hey, do you need anything? What do you need to do your best work? That simple conversation always makes, those workplaces so accessible. And they all had really open minds. The character was really interesting, and I loved working on Bump. but, you know, I've had other jobs and, you know, not to call out, but where I've requested my access requirements and they go, production goes, yep, okay, all good. You know, because my adjustments are just, I need to be able to sit down between takes. Because on a big 12-hour, 14-hour day, I can't be standing waiting for, you know, the camera to be put together or the
For
lighting.
people don't know, like in between takes, it sometimes takes like 15 minutes to
Yeah.
move an orange
Yeah.
and set up a camera and change a lighting. And it's
Yeah.
a very, to shoot 3 minutes of a movie, it takes like sometimes weeks, just for context. And we often stand/sit around and wait around. Yeah. We as in actors, oh my God, I'm a loser. I'm a loser.
Oh, here he is. He's
Oh
changed.
my
You are
God.
an actor, Dylan.
Jeez.
Claim it.
He's changed.
It's who you are.
What am I doing?
Put it out there. Dylan Alcott, actor.
I don't know how much I can or can't say about my role, but what I will say, and you'll be pumped to know about this, I am disabled as in I'm in a wheelchair. I don't talk about my disability once in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
There
name
we
is
go. Ding,
X,
ding, ding.
and I just realised when you said it, there's no brand origin about why I'm in a wheelchair. I'm just being my character. And I just thought about that. That's really cool. I just thought, a few jokes and stuff about it, but like, no, and as soon as you said that, I went, that's actually me. That's my character. And that's where you want to get to. There are some where, I might play Stephen Hawking and that's obviously part of it or whatever. But there's other parts where it's just like you are this person and you're just acting and that's where you want to get to across all streams of diversity. You know what I mean? And we've got to that point. It's like not like if there's a person who's from the LGBTQI community playing a role, it's like, so, when did you realize you were gay or whatever it is? You just might just be gay in the show, whatever it is. And I think that's where we're heading as well, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bridie, it's Ball of Uncomfortable time. Ball of Uncomfortable is where we get sent questions to you. Some of them are specific. Some of them might be, ones that we've sort of got on a Word document for somebody, our next guest who has spastic diplegia, cerebral palsy. Mine is specific. I'm not sure about yours, Dill. Not sure. Mine's pretty juicy. I'll let you go first.
Mine's pretty crap.
Let's just do mine.
No offense to mine from
Mark.
Facebook, but mine's no good. Let's just go with yours.
Alyssa starts off by saying, hi, Bridie, fellow CP here. Not knowing your personal relationship history, or if you want to talk about it, how did you deal with your twin brother and sister and friends being sexually active and perhaps you not being able to relate or wishing you could but not having the opportunity? Currently dealing with this right now with an able-bodied sister who's 1 year younger than me, going on dates and talking about her experiences, which I can't relate to or share for not wanting to.
Interesting. There are so many parts to that question. You know what my experience was? I was just as active in the dating sphere as my brother and sister.
I just also asked that to Zach Alcott. Dylan was more active before Zach as well.
Okay.
The opposite
Little
of
flex
that.
there.
A couple of legends here, Bridie and Dylan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got to get out there.
Yeah, and it wasn't presumptuous from Alyssa there, but
No,
obviously it's
fair
her
question.
personal experience.
Fair question.
No, absolutely. And you know what? I get it, Alyssa, because I was so insecure when I first started dating about my disability because, disability historically, we as disabled people are seen as asexual, we're infantilized, we're not seen as, sensual sexual beings like we are, just like everyone else. So I know I, again, internalized a lot of it and I really had to work hard to be like, no, I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm just going to go and have fun because if I let myself be driven by my insecurities, I'm going to be missing out on so much stuff. And of course that came with certain barriers and certain conversations that I guess my brother and sister didn't have when they became sexually active or when they started dating. But, you just got to be in it to win it and go for gold and hope for the best. And you will make mistakes and it will be silly and you will feel silly. But, yeah, you got to get out there.
You'll also run into a few idiots who'll give you a tough time, you know what I mean? So it all works out in the wash.
Absolutely.
What do you want to do? What do you want to be? How big do you want to take this acting? Put it out to the world? You told me to before, and I've been putting it out to the world that I really want to do this properly and go to America and win an Oscar. What about you?
Absolutely. Sky's the limit for me as well. So I might ride your courtails there, Dill.
We need to write something together is what I've been thinking.
Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
need to get some good writers in a room and write like a really good thing. I don't know why I'm looking at
I reckon
you.
I got some ideas we can work
Let's do
together.
it.
Because
Should we
I think about this stuff all the time because, I'm so lucky with my acting career and the opportunities that I've had. But I'd love to see more disabled content out there. Like we've got The Leftovers, which is really amazing, and we've got Chloe Hayden, friend of the pod, who's on Heartbreak High. But in terms of 20% of our population has disability, and that's not reflected on our screens.
Less than 1%.
On the screens? No.
I
was actually wondering what the statistic would be of
less
disability
than 1%,
representation.
20% of the world's populations are disabled. Less than 1% are sent on screens. That's probably one of the worst industries for inclusion, if you think about it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? As a young aspiring actor, of course you dream of, getting that Oscar, of getting those big roles, of, being a part of productions that you're really proud of. And of course that's what I want to do.
Let's start with the Logies. And we'll go from Logies
Well, you got a Logie.
to Emmys. And Emmys
Yeah,
to
you already
Oscars.
got one.
You already got a Logie. Back off.
Yeah. No, I don't want another Logie. I want Bridie and a Logie. Chloe Hayden should have got a Logie last week, by the way. The other week.
Absolutely. Yeah. My dream is for disability to become the norm on screen. My dream is for people to feel the absence of disability if it isn't.
There.
Yeah, we're not there yet. I think we feel that with other underrepresented or minority groups. I think we're definitely feeling that. I want to feel that for disability as well.
Love that. I might steal that line. That's good.
You like it. Hey, Bridie, thank you so much for coming on Listen Able. It's been not a long time coming, but it's been too long, even though I saw you last week.
Sold herself short, also an incredible consultant and disability advocate, doing incredible stuff in the space. Multifaceted, Bridie.
Chuck the Instagram out, Bridie. Let's get those numbers up.
My Instagram is Bridie McKim, all one word. It's very creative.
1 M, not 2 M's.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to have just a click below. So hit the show notes. It'll link you straight to the button.
Get us some
2
more
clicks. Click to the Instagram profile.
Get us some more
for
international
follow.
acting work. Thank you, directors.
And get you guys on Bluey as well. All right. Thank you very much, Bridie. We love you. And thanks for being part of Listen Able.
See you, brides. Love you.
Appreciate it. Love you too.
Love you too.
Love you too.